I do want to start with the story of the moment, though. And you wrote a very interesting piece today on the phenomenon that is Taylor Swift. And I took my 2 young daughters on Friday night, declared Swifties, both of them. But I was really interested to read your piece because I've been reflecting on this the last few days, and it is quite a phenomenon in the way that performer speaks to a generation of young women, particularly, Greg.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So she's an extraordinary popular culture phenomenon, as big as anything we've seen, I guess. My interest in her is that whereas popular culture, especially in the rock and pop area, has been sort of self-consciously edgy and in faux rebellion and, against the system. Even a wonderful guy like Billy Joel says, I'd rather laugh with the sinners than cry with the saints. Taylor Swift makes joy and niceness and wholesomeness part of her appeal. And it's an extraordinary popular success. So lots of dads go with their daughters, lots of mums and daughters and grandmothers go together. It's something young people don't feel ashamed to have their mum and dad at the concert with them. And her message has been one of sort of lots of girl power. That's fabulous. But she doesn't have a chip on her shoulder. She actually thinks society and her country and so on are good things. And for popular culture to abandon just for a moment its reflex hostility to the society and instead to be celebrating the individual within society, I think she's a terrific force for good myself.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. And having my 8-year-old in the audience, I was quite pleased and encouraged and very positive about the fact that she didn't swear once in the whole 3.5 hour show.
Well, Kieran, it's worth noting. Yeah, that is absolutely. So she doesn't need to play those silly games of faux rebellion. But it's worth noting Anthony Albanese and his fiancée and Scott Morrison and his wife and kids were at the Sydney concert together, and our most magnificent and distinguished historian, Geoffrey Blainey, felt moved to write a 2,000-word meditation on her. So I don't know that anyone else has been able to unite Albanese, Morrison, Blainey, Kieran Gilbert and Greg Sheridan for what that's worth.
Yeah, exactly. And how about this for a segue? We go from the Swifties to NATO. I never thought I'd do that in 2024, but there you go. From Taylor Swift to NATO. And the fact that Sweden is going to be a signatory and be accepted into NATO, which is quite extraordinary when you think about the history of its independent foreign policy. We talk about India a lot in that sense, but Sweden has a similar sort of background in that sense of independent foreign policy, Greg.
Well, that's right, Kieran. So Sweden has been notionally sort of neutral or non-aligned for 200 years. So it's a huge step to join NATO. It shows the kind of non sequitur, the foolishness, the self-contradiction of those people who say the expansion of NATO provoked Vladimir Putin into this brutal, savage war against Ukraine. What Putin has brought about by this war against Ukraine is the accession of Sweden and Finland historically into NATO. Both those nations have very substantial, quite powerful armed forces, and Finland in particular has a very long land border with Russia. So Putin has contrived to get NATO right up next to him, whereas he claimed his desire was to keep NATO as far away from Russian borders as possible. You combine Sweden's accession with Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, saying we may have to face a war with Russia. I think that's unlikely, but these are very serious and grave days for Europe. And with America holding up aid for Ukraine, Europe needs to step up to the mark. And, Sweden's a very civilised, successful democratic country with, as I say, substantial armed forces. So it can only strengthen NATO tremendously to have Sweden accepted as a full member.